I've created an aerospace device that will actually fly us from right here at the Arc de Triomphe right to the Croisette at Cannes. And it only takes 25 minutes.
Wow. Unfortunately, I'm a dreadful traveller in space. I vomit right over the person that's opposite me.
Oh, man. Fortunately, the craft has individual pods. So while you will, in fact, vomit, it's not going to get on me.
Oh, sounds amazing. Amazing. Unfortunately, I forgot my pants. And I can't go travelling without any pants on. That'd be ridiculous.
Oh, Mike, your idea of ridiculous. You're always with your idea of ridiculous. Don't you know that fortunately this is a pantsless conference? And I think there we could go scene. We can.
Hirsch, that was brilliant.
Martians landed.
Yes.
Wearing Prada suits.
Yes.
Drinking Henry Seltzer.
Yes.
Chewing juicy fruit.
Yes, and?
Your branding here.
Yes, brand.
Your message here.
Yes, and?
A verse about
Yes.
your product here.
Yes.
I'm Hirsch Redman.
Yes, and?
I'm a message therapist.
Yes.
And I have a podcast.
Yes, brand.
That's right, that's it.
Yes.
We'll help you fix the world.
Yes.
Or your bottom line.
All right.
Your bottom line.
Get it. I get it. Welcome to the Yes Brand Podcast. Yes.
My guest today is Mike Lander. Mike is responsible for nearly a £500 million in business deals, but I just know him as my friend Mike, and he's going to talk to us today about life in this crazy world. And speaking of a crazy world, if you were to take a look at yourself in a home movie at 15 years old as a boy of 15, and now look at the life you lead and the work that you do, can you draw a line from there to here?
Hirsch, so first of all, thank you for inviting me. Hopefully your audience will understand my accent rather than my accident. Because
no, my accent is an accident. Your accent is the product of your natural exposure to a certain continent. Whereas mine is and I have been incontinent, but I haven't. Or did not grow up there. So could you draw a line? No, you couldn't. Because if you looked at me as a 15-year-old, you would never have predicted where I'd get to now. It's taken me, and we'll talk about all sorts of stuff, Hirsch, as we go along, and we'll have some fun, yeah.
And hopefully there's some valuable lessons for your audience. And what I like to do is drop in the odd thing that might be valuable. So one thing is, for example, is you need to find mentors in life. You've got to find people, and you don't need many, but one or two, who basically challenge your assumptions, believe in you, and help you on your way. You know this from the stuff you do regarding movies and documentaries and comedy, the story arc. When someone explained the story arc to me, I was like, say that again? What do you mean? And they're like, well, in a Disney film, you meet a hero, and the hero's got a challenge. And then the hero meets a guide, and the guide helps them build a plan. And the hero goes on the journey with the plan, with the guide by their side, and the hero wins the day. And if you look at the story of life, mentors are your guides. They're the people that you meet who you didn't search them out necessarily, but you found them, and they challenged your thinking. And they stopped you from just following the herd.
Yeah.
And they started to make you believe in yourself that something was possible. You weren't quite sure what it was, but something different was possible. And I've been lucky in my life. I've had guides, I'd have people that were agitators, and it stretched me. And that's how I got to where I am, basically. Until recently, so I would say until 10 years ago, my speaking skills, I used to speak way too fast. So I'd speak really quickly, and I'd talk quickly to all sorts of people. And I'd be really excited, and it'd be amazing. And I could do all these things, it'd be fantastic. And then I learned, if you halve your pace, in your head it will feel like it's way too slow. It feels like you're running it in half speed as a film. But it allows you to think, to consider, and from an audience point of view, I think, it draws them in. It makes them want to find out what's going to happen next. So what's your view as a long-time presenter and film person and comedian about that tone and speed of voice? How important is it?
Oh, it's critical, and it's amazing to me because I wouldn't have known that you had this speedy conversational nature. But the amazing fact is that you are consciously adjusting it. And that just speaks to the fact that we have so much more power over our communication than we might realize. Yeah. And those changes show an appreciation of the person you're communicating with. So it isn't all about us. You know, I couldn't agree more that the slowing down sounds strange to us, but that to the person who we're communicating with, the adjustment is so profound. And I know that from talking to fast talkers, and it always, often I'm semi-fluent in Spanish, but speaking to someone who just rattles stuff off in Spanish, that's the key to Sofia Vergara's success, is that she's made a career out of the unintelligible rapidity with which she speaks in English with a Spanish accent. So
amazing. So something else. So as we go through this this journey of a conversation for hopefully the value of your listeners rather than the value of us.
Yeah.
Another thing that happens, so years and years and years ago, I read some books on NLP, so neuro-linguistic programming for your listeners, which was, I think, developed by two people called Bandler and Grindler. And if I've got this right, many, many years ago, what they worked out was that, and I might be interpreting and twisting this slightly, but kind of bear with me as I go through it. We filter things out. So, in a conversation, imagine we're in the pub, because I like the pub. I like a glass of wine.
Yeah, me too.
Maybe one day we'll have a glass of wine together, Hirsch. Who knows?
Yes, I hope so.
We'll be in the pub and we're 2 glasses in, and we're having a chat about Lego for whatever reason, because we like Lego and we're interested in Lego. And what'll happen after that 2 glasses in, and that's why I link it back to this NLP, is I'll be waiting for my moment to talk. In my head, I've got something about the DeLorean that sat behind me, about why it's there. So I'm waiting for my moment to talk about this DeLorean Lego car. You've been saying all sorts of things for 2 minutes over your glass of wine. I've been looking at you. It looks like I'm listening to you, but I'm really waiting to talk. Yeah. And in communication, what I've learned, and I've learned this as a negotiator as well, is you've got to kind of almost like take away the filter, take away what's in your head that you want to say, and really tune in to what the other person's saying and why they're saying it. And that's when the magic happens, in my view. Thoughts?
Do you know, the entire time you've been speaking, I've been thinking that I'm 2 glasses of wine in, but I forgot that I had a shot with my mate just before we met up, so
it's like
what was
Peter
the
Cook
question?
and Dudley Moore.
Yeah, well,
this is turning into Peter Cook and Dudley Moore.
Yeah, that's right, and that's not even my actual Arthur impression.
Exactly, I've noticed.
An actual Arthur impression, but it is true, because I do that too as a host. I hear something and I make a mental note of what they said, and then I have to monitor where the conversation is going, and then I make a decision at some point, oh, is it worth calling back to that, or has that moment passed?
Yeah.
And, and often it has, and then I wonder if I make the joke, let's say I was thinking of making a joke, if I make the joke, how will it be received? Will the guest think, oh, nice. Yeah. The whole time I was talking, you were just waiting to say this joke. But if I do it right, and my timing is good, then it does fit in. But it is definitely, there are two tracks going in our conversations, and sometimes we are hyper aware of that, and that takes us out even further. And sometimes, to your point, we let go of the expectation. I had a guest on recently, and I said, okay, was there a way you'd like to be introduced, or is there a certain, also had very esoteric background, and so there was a lot of ways that I could go with it. And he said, my mind is completely blank at this moment. My mind is blank, so anything you want to throw at me, just go ahead, because there's nothing else that I'm thinking. And that was amazing. And
yep. Exactly.
I think that not planning speaks to how our lives do and don't unfold.
Yeah.
What was the presumption when you were, 15 years old? What did you expect would happen? What expectations did you have?
So, a bit of context for you and your listeners. So I was brought up in a place called Stockport, which is in the north of England. Both my parents, loving parents, I was adopted as a kid. So I was adopted at 6 months old. I was very fortunate, because had I not been adopted, I doubt I'd be here today. I don't think I'd have survived the journey. Literally, I wouldn't have survived the journey, yeah. I don't think. So I was very fortunate, I was adopted. Both my parents they didn't have degrees. They weren't academic people. Our kind of peer group, my parents' peer group, were people that were administrators and people that were doing hard jobs, often manual labour jobs, or they were doing administrative jobs, working long hours, not earning a great deal of money, didn't have degrees. And the reason I mention that is, someone said to me, when did you first think about being an entrepreneur? And I said, when I was 15, I didn't know the word existed. Literally, no idea that word existed. We had a guy, a friend of my father's, called George. George was a scrap metal merchant. George was a tough bloke. George was a boxer. You wouldn't mess with George. George had all sorts of businesses in his life. And if I look back now, George was an entrepreneur. George was opportunistic. He'd find ways of making money. Now, what George did in the rest of his life, I don't want to know, really. I don't think I should ask, because he was a pretty tough bloke. But nonetheless, George, I think, was an entrepreneur. And the reason I say that is because if in your peer group, you're all the same people, and you don't have other world experiences, then when you say what were your expectations at 15, well, my expectations were that I'd be a mechanic. Why? Because I was good with my hands, I liked cars, we knew a garage mechanic who was also an entrepreneur because he had his own garage. I just thought he was a mechanic, fix people's cars. So I thought, I'll be a mechanic. And that was my expectation. That was it. So it wasn't to build a big business. It wasn't to travel the world. It was, I'll be a mechanic. And then something magical happened in my life. And it was a complete and utter turning point. So, imagine, set the scene. You're good at setting the scene, Hirsch. You're in that industry. I'm 16 years old. I'm about to leave school. I wasn't going to go to university. That wasn't my route. So I said to my parents, I want to get a job. Great. So in the UK, we have these things called apprenticeships. We did back in the day. I'm 58 now, so I'm getting on in years. Then I was 16. So back when I was 16, you could do an apprenticeship. And I applied for jobs as an apprentice. And I applied for loads of jobs. And I arrived at one company in the north of England in a pretty rough area, and I rock up to this interview. And the guy says to me, bear in mind, I'm 16. I lack confidence, very poor communicator. I talk really quickly, I'm very excited by all sorts of things.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the guy says to me, he says, you're not very bright. You don't seem like you're very capable. We might get you sweeping the floors, but I'm not sure. We'll let you know. I walked out. And I had a choice. You either accept that and go, maybe I'm not very bright, and I won't amount to much, and I may just accept it. Or you say, there must be more. Surely there must be more. Mm-hmm. And a friend of the family's, we were lucky, was a lecturer at the local university, the local college. The only person we knew that was an academic. And I didn't know him at all well, a guy called Eric Dearman, who sadly died now many, many years ago. But Eric Dearman decided to help. He decided to talk to one of his businesses that he worked with, because they were training people in college, and then they'd feed them into businesses. And he talked to one of the businesses locally, and they opened up a place for me as an apprentice. Because he said, trust me, Michael will be good. He'll do well, he'll be fine, but he needs the right environment. They created a job for me as an apprentice. Now, play that forward for 4 years. I get the job. I'm delighted. First pay packet, £25 in a brown envelope in the factory, handed out on a Friday. I'm like, wow, this is amazing. £25. Fantastic. I'm earning. And I'm going to college. So I do 1 day a week at college, because the scheme was you work, they pay you 5 days a week, but 1 day they send you to college to go and do more learning.
Yeah, I was going to ask. So, okay, so now you'd already, converted yourself into a college student, which was beyond what you had perceived.
No
so
idea.
You've already bested this asshole.
I bested the broom sweeper. The broom sweeper.
The guy
I'm now
who,
way past the broom sweeper. Fantastic.
Right.
So,
right.
4 years of college. After year 3, I'm doing day release. And remember, my grades were awful at school, like really awful at school, like pretty appalling at school. And therefore, I knew I wasn't cut out for academic life, really. 3 years into this course, I get a letter from the college. Dear Michael, because they call you Michael then. Dear Michael, you've won Student of the Year award. So I read this letter, and I'm like, you've won Student of the Year award. So I rang the college, and I said, I've got a letter, but you've made a mistake.
Yeah.
It's gone to the wrong person. So I thought I'd better let you know. They went, no, you came top of the year. But I'm like, but that's not possible, because I'm not academic. They went, no, you came top of the year. And what I worked out was, I had great lecturers, but more importantly, it was applying. On that 1 day, we'd learn about electronic circuits. And then on 4 days, I'd go and build them. I'd see how they worked. Then I'd go back into college on Friday, and I'd work out what I've learned and what I didn't know and do the next thing. Rinse and repeat. I kept going. So when people say, school's not for me, college isn't for me, I'm going to get a job. If you're lucky like me, you find a job that you love, there's a gap in your knowledge to help you do your job, you go to college to fill the gap, to apply it in work, to find out you've got more gaps, to go back to college to fill in the gaps, and you keep going. And that one moment changed the course of my life.
It's a good argument for not just the idea of doing what you love, but learn what you love.
Yeah.
Because we're not born with a fully, armed skill set. We may have a certain tendency towards something or a certain like of something and a dislike. We have certain innate skills, but we have to learn something. And your, kind of, whether it was planned or unplanned specifically, the step you took was to learn and do, and in their view, excel.
Exactly. And now in the job that I do now, I'm still an experimenter. Throughout my life, I believe in. I've got loads of phrases. Hirsch. I've got loads of phrases. But one of them is, do a little, learn a lot. Mm-hmm. So, active experimentation. Try an experiment, see what happens. Learn from it, adapt, try something else. You keep adapting. Podcasting is a great example, actually. I'm because of the nature of the way I've come through my professional career. Digital marketing I was a bit late to the party for me. I was a bit more of a traditional marketer and salesperson, and then digital marketing happened fast, and I didn't really understand what was going on for quite a long time. And so I was like exploring around trying to find out, how do you basically market yourself? Because it's me. I sell my skills to people that need training in negotiation skills, salespeople typically. And I was working out, well, how do I find these people? How do I reach them? How do I get access to them? How do they know I exist? How do I raise awareness? Mm-hmm. And so I tried all sorts. I was on LinkedIn and it didn't really work. And I'd try a YouTube channel and my son subscribed, but no one else did. And I tried all sorts. And then I found out through a guy called Pat Flynn, who's big in the States, SPI is his thing. Mm-hmm. And I got into one of his communities, and I started hearing about this kind of podcasting thing. Sounds interesting. What's podcasting? And a couple of people said, well, we'll interview you for our podcast. Be a guest. So I was a guest, and a few things happened. One, I really enjoyed it. I like this. I like the not quite sure it's going, bit of banter, bit of a dialogue, and then occasionally some magic things happen. And I realized that being a guest on hosts' podcasts is a brilliant way to allow people to find out who I am, what I'm like as a person, because people buy from people. And if I'm really lucky, some of the audience actually has a problem that I can help solve. And it's been weird I love being a guest on people's podcasts now. I'm very lucky that you invite me, because it's your platform, it's your audience, and I get to have a chat with you and talk about some of the things happened in my life. And it's an easy way for me to get my message out, have some fun, meet new people, without having to work out how this whole thing works. So it's been fascinating.
Yeah, it's fun. It's fun. I enjoy being on but I have kind of the opposite experience. I love the mechanics, so to speak, of show business anyway. And I love the behind the curtain aspect, and I love knowing how it all is put together and made. And so for me, I've always been, I don't even think of it as being in front of the camera. I think of it as being behind the scenes. That's always just felt super comfortable to me. Even my grandfather owned a Hebrew bookstore in South Beach, in Miami Beach, where we grew up. And
that's definitely a niche.
Yeah, that is a niche. Hebrew bookstore, yeah. And I loved, it had first of all, the smell of the books was always, intoxicating to me. And then the fact that it had this kind of alcove atmosphere, and you could go into the back, into the storeroom where there were, all the inventory and all the books and the bookkeeping in the little office, and all that stuff to me felt so cool and magical. So even though I was an extrovert, I didn't like to sit on the stool and work at the register. I loved to go in the back and kind of live this kind of fantasy life of who knows what stories I was making up about being in this place. And I just love that. I love the behind the scenes aspect of everything.
But that's interesting that you talk about that. So do you see yourself as an extrovert? Would you see yourself as an extrovert typically?
No, not really. I mean, I say that because I see myself as a performer, but I don't think that makes me an extrovert, because a performer can be on the stage with hot lights on them talking to 1,000 people, but that they're not actually talking one-on-one to people or one to a group, so I don't know.
So what about
you? What about you? Because
what would your guess be?
Well, my guess would be that you're an extrovert.
Okay.
That would be my guess. Yeah.
No, I'm not.
Yeah.
So if you put me in a room, and again, I think this comes down to kind of definitions of what we believe. Received wisdom. Received wisdom in society, you talk about the truth tastes funny. You know, the truth is, received wisdom is really bad for you.
Right.
The wisdom that you receive from the masses, on the whole, is not good news. Because, from my point of view, it allows you not to think about it. So if we say, oh, you're an extrovert, you go, oh yeah, they're an extrovert. Absolutely. Because they're quite loud and they're on stage. So they're an extrovert. So no, so let's think about it. So what do we mean when we say extrovert and introvert? So, a definition, maybe to play with. An extrovert gets their energy from being around other people. Could be a definition.
Right, right.
My energy doesn't come from that. My energy comes from, I like to sit and think. I like to have a controlled environment around me. I don't like to go out and go to random parties or networking events. It doesn't suit me. I'm very happy training 100, 1,000 people. Because it's my content, I'm prepared, I'm super well prepared, I've got my own stories, and the audience is interested in what I'm trying to get across, and they'll ask me questions. And because of my experience base and bank of knowledge, I'm happy to answer the questions. When I come off stage, I don't want to go into that audience of 1,000 people and party. It's not me. I'll have one-on-ones, very happy to. But I get my energy from, closer relationships with a few people and sitting and thinking. Just a thought.
No, I love that. I'm also, I think we're both presenters in that sense.
Yeah.
We can present. We are comfortable presenting ideas to groups, but I also believe that's because it makes it easier for us. We don't have to explain who we are. We don't have to introduce ourselves. We don't have to do that 100 times in a room, and that makes it more comfortable. I don't consider myself a mingler either, right. but I think it does happen where the same type of behavior that I do on stage, making jokes, picking up on people's signals and responding to it, can be accomplished in smaller groups and one-on-one. One-on-one's very different. One-on-one to me is like this. This is more like sitting and thinking. This is more like, and I do enjoy that. I do enjoy sitting with another person who's doing whatever they're doing and kind of just sharing the energy in the space and allowing things to happen. But I think you said it. An extrovert really gets that electricity from other people. They really want to connect, literally, like to electrically connect
as a conductor.
To yes, yeah. And
they're the lightning
and I
rod.
don't think that's
So something else, another kind of truth that tastes funny, maybe negotiating. So it's my kind of topic. It's what I love doing. It's what I enjoy talking about with the people in business. If you asked 100 people what they think are the success factors to negotiate a deal, what they'll probably say is, well, you can tell a great negotiator. You can see they're just instinctive. They're brilliant on their feet. They're really sharp-minded, and that's not me. So success factors, I think you've either got it or you haven't. You're either a brilliant negotiator or you're not. Yeah. So it's bunkum. It's complete and utter rubbish. Anyone can negotiate anything 10 times better by doing a few simple things. So should we explore what they are for some fun?
Yes, I think it would be great to see. Here are some tips. I wasn't going to try to elicit these from you, but I think you want to share it. And I think my audience would love to hear it. So yes, let's talk about that.
So the first thing is 80% of the value of any negotiation is in the preparation. Only 20% of the value is when you're sat at the table with your counterparty. So that's number one. Number two, Anxiety and emotional fear is the enemy of the negotiator. When we walk into a room, if we feel anxious, if we're fearful of what they might say, how they might behave, what they might do, we're on the back foot before we start. A simple tip before you walk in the room, and I learnt this from, I think it was Travis Fox, Dr. Fox. Breathe. Sounds so simple. Breathe in. And breathe out. Just do 4 of those. Deep breathing exercises reduces anxiety, and it transfers the blood that's circulating in your kind of stomach, the knots, to your head, the thinking, which is what we want when we're going to negotiate. We want all the blood in our head, not in our gut. So that's number 2. And number 3, really simple tool for anyone to prepare better for any negotiation. 3 simple things you can do. Number 1, get a bit of paper or use your screen, whatever you like. Write down 2 objectives. What are you trying to achieve from this negotiation? Then write down, what do you think your counterpart is trying to achieve? Is there some kind of match? Are we broadly in the same boat? So that's number 1. Then number 2, the second step, how long is it going to take? Are we talking 8 weeks and there's 3 steps? If we are, write it down, send it to your counterparty. I think it's going to take us about 8 weeks. There's about 3 steps. Do you think that's right? They'll probably go, no, I think it's going to take 6 weeks and there's 2 steps. Great. Now their fingerprints are on your timeline. Brilliant. So that's step 2. And step 3, this is all preparation, remember. You've not met the negotiator face-to-face to negotiate. Step 3, write down the variables you're negotiating around. What do I mean? So, in a negotiation, there's price. Yep, definitely. There's the length of the contract in business. How long will the contract last? There's what they call termination rights. What allows them to terminate the contract? Intellectual property, all sorts. Exclusivity. So there's 5. And then for each one, just write down on a bit of paper, what would I ideally like? What's my ideal? And what would I accept at the bottom end for each one? Now you've prepared. It can take you 3 minutes or 3 hours, but you've prepared. And when you walk into the negotiation and you start having a discussion, think of it like a mixing board for an audio engineer. So those variables, as someone turns one down, you turn the other one up. Because you're exchanging. If you want a lower price, I can change the scope, and I want a longer contract. I want a 2-year contract, not a 1-year contract, for a smaller price. And the scope will change. Is that okay? No, it's not okay. Okay. What would you prefer? Well, I want half the price and no contract length and terminate when I want and I own all the IP and it's exclusive. Is that a negotiation, Hirsch? Do we think that's a negotiation? No, not. No, it's not. It's a steamroller driving over you.
Right.
The act of preparation means that you'll go, well, we're obviously not on the same page. Maybe it's time to walk away.
You could say, I'm adjusting my estimate to 10 weeks now because you've just added another 2 weeks. Do you really want to add another 2 weeks to this negotiation?
Exactly.
But you're so right, Mike, because the preparation is that script that I talk about in life, you know. In life. And you don't need a verbatim script, and in fact, a verbatim script impedes you. But what you need is the beats, what we call the beats. Right. You know, you need those beats. Now, you know, being a good improvisational actor, let's say, is very helpful in negotiations because it is all improv. Yeah. But improv doesn't come from nowhere. Improv comes from an idea. And then you build on that idea and build on that idea. And you're just using imagination to flesh it out and make it funny. But you're you're starting with something. You're given something, an offer, they call it, interestingly enough.
Interesting.
Yeah.
No, but this is interesting about improv being, I'd never thought of that. But I would imagine, as you say, you're starting with something. Do you have simple frameworks in your head? So when you're improvising, you're doing it in a way which is like, there's building blocks, but I could build a house, I could build a dog kennel, I could build a swimming pool. They're all made out of bricks, but they all look different. So I assemble them differently. Is that
Absolutely? Yeah. Well, what usually we do in improv is there's a game. We will set rules for a game, and the game will have parameters, and we'll say, okay, so here's the, one game that I like to do with
Let's do one now.
People.
Let's do. I've never done improv in my life. Let's do one.
Okay, so let's do one now. So there's a game called Fortunately, Unfortunately.
Okay.
And it's a 2-person game, so it's good for us. And essentially, one person will make a statement, fortunately something, and we'll do that. And the other person has to say unfortunately, but what you notice about it is you're not negating what the other person said. In other words, they put it out there and you're accepting it as a reality, which is the yes and rule of improv. Yes and rule of improv means I accept your offer, I respond on top of that, I build it.
Okay.
And that's really the core of improvisational comedy, is that it's never no, it's always yes, but it can be yes, and here's something really bad about that.
Okay.
So, and then we get a suggestion from the audience that gives us just some kind of, like I would say, I need a location, and somebody can throw out the south of France as the location. That just popped into my head. There's only two of us, so let's go. So we say I need a location and I need an occupation. So you throw out an occupation. Just throw out any occupation. Chemist. Okay, perfect. So we have two chemists in the south of France, and I'll start with a fortunately.
Perfect.
So I say, well, Mike, and I could do a French accent, but we'll keep it simpler.
Let's keep it simple.
Case, at least to start. Yeah. So I say, well, Mike, fortunately, the conference doesn't start for an hour and a half.
Unfortunately, Hirsch, the conference is in Cannes, and we're in Paris. We're never going to get there in an hour and a half.
Well, fortunately, and I didn't tell you this initially because I knew you'd be excited, I've created an aerospace device that will actually fly us from right here at the Arc de Triomphe right to the Croisette at Cannes. And it only takes 25 minutes.
Wow. Unfortunately, I'm a dreadful traveller in space. I vomit right over the person that's opposite me.
Oh man, yeah, I'm very disappointed to hear that, in the sense that I know what that's like for you. Fortunately, craft has individual pods, so while you will in fact vomit, it's not going to get on me.
Oh, sounds marvellous. Unfortunately, Hirsch, I'm very claustrophobic. I can't go in a pod. Could I go in your pod?
You want to go in my pod with me?
Yeah.
Or you want to squeeze into my pod?
In your pod with you, right next to you.
Well, fortunately, I have not only do I have a 2-pod travel unit that I've invented, I also have a space cab that actually seats 6 people. So if we find enough people. Now, they don't have individual pods in there. It puts us all in a 6-person pod. You're going to throw up on someone. But I think since I'm the driver, I'm going to be in the front seat. And I just will make sure not to have you next to me, but you can throw up in the back, and we just have to find, a few suckers to join us, because it does require a group of people.
Wow. Sounds amazing. Amazing. Unfortunately, I forgot my pants. And I can't go travelling without any pants on. That'd be ridiculous.
Oh, Mike, your idea of ridiculous. You're always with your idea of ridiculous. Don't you know that fortunately this is a pantsless conference? And I think there we could go scene. We can.
Hirsch, that was brilliant. I've never done that.
Oh, thank you for playing that. Thank you for playing that. Well, there's the beauty of it is that it takes a minute, even for me, to adjust to the limitlessness.
Yes.
Of the situation.
Yes.
So we're really not constricted, except for what an improviser feels is the specter of time kind of looming over. Like, you don't want to take too long, you don't want to lose the audience, and in fact there are rapid fire games that are harder, and really you're more likely to lose one of those games and then you get tapped out. So some other improviser will come in because you took too long. But yeah, that's so much fun, and I do think that's a very interesting parallel to negotiation, because we really have to not be thrown. I guess. I mean, I don't think of myself as a good negotiator, but for me, what has made me made me good, like you said, anybody can do it. It's not about are you a good or bad negotiator. What helps me is humor. What helps me is getting so comfortable with the environment that I can disarm the person I'm negotiating with some kind of good humor that lets them know, oh, this guy's not scared of me. This guy's not afraid, intimidated.
Exactly.
And if that person would have to try to intimidate me, that would be bad for them. So they don't want to have to try.
That's right.
But I may have an advantage in comedy, Now, if they have no sense of humor, which has happened, then they're back to being in control, which is interesting, because it's not going to go well for me after that if they don't have a sense of humor, or if they control their sense of humor and they know, okay, I'm not going to let this punk throw me with his comedy. I'm going to pretend and act like I don't have any sense of humor about it, and I'm going to go back to your prep. If he did good prep, he would be like, no, I'm just sticking to the facts here. I don't want him to get to know this guy. I don't care. I don't want to,
That's right.
I don't want to fall in love with this guy, and then I'm going to give him more than I should give him.
Yeah, and that is a technique I use as a negotiator. Part of the technique is, and salespeople try it a lot. Salespeople try and befriend me. They try and become they try and build a relationship with me, and I stop them kind of stone cold dead. It's like, I'm not here to be a friend. We've got a deal to do. We know what the parameters are. We need to get a deal done so we can all move on with our lives.
Yeah.
And a lot of salespeople find that very difficult. I say to salespeople, when you meet a procurement person, for example, a buyer, a purchaser, I've assumed that you've already sold this deal to someone, the marketing director or the president or someone. You've kind of sold them this dream, and you're at my door because they've told you to come and see me. Well, I assume you've already sold it in terms of the idea. Now we're going to negotiate a contract and see if actually you can supply to us or not. Because you might not be able to. Because I've got loads of questions for you. And a lot of salespeople are thrown by that. They're like, but it's all about it's all about the amazing creative that we do. Yeah. And I'm like, no, It's not about that now. Got to move on. Tell me you've got more. Tell me there's more than just your pitch. Seriously, Hirsch,
nice.
There must be more.
Yeah.
To do the Jack Nicholson thing. Yeah.
Tell me you haven't pinned your hopes.
Who knew?
I don't know that line exactly, but
No,
I know
exactly.
which scene you're talking about. A Few Good Men
and phone calls. Exactly.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And phone calls.
Phone calls.
Because late at night in places you don't talk about.
Exactly.
You want me on that wall. You need me on that wall.
Correct. Exactly right. So
Oh,
there we
what
go.
a great movie! What a great scene. Well,
those are my tips on negotiation.
Those are great. See, those are greater tips than we could have planned for. I did want to ask you about before we go about Resignal, about the SEO agency, because that's very interesting to me personally, as someone who's on the creative side of marketing, and there's always the counterpart that is responsible for data for SEO. So tell me a little bit about that and how that factors into your world.
So it's a company called Resignal, so Re-Signal, started by a very talented guy called Kevin Gibbons in the UK. He's been in SEO from the days it kind of started, really, search engine optimization. And I got to know Kevin about 8-9 years ago now through a business network. And we just kind of got talking, and we talked a bit more, and then over time, eventually, I became the chairman of Resignal. He's the chief exec. And what we do is that we basically do SEO for big e-commerce brands. So e-commerce companies that sell sports gear, for example, we would work with them to help them get the rankings for certain products and ranges to the top of Google through finding the right keywords and optimizing them so that we get the right kind of traffic and doing on-site content, on-site technical optimization and building strategies, all that kind of stuff. And that's about the extent of my knowledge, Hirsch. We've reached the limit of my knowledge of SEO. Kevin,
and you're the chairman. And you're the chairman. What I love, Mike, is you say we met each other and we were having a rather lovely chat. And so then, he's the chief executive, and jump ahead to 8 or 9 days later, and I'm the chairman. You see, and now there's meetings and conferences and telephone calls. But being the chairman, you're afforded all the expenses and considerations that would be due such an individual. But and then there's about a 3-string sentence group of sentences that explain, SEO. I still don't know what the bloody letters stand for, but whatever.
Fantastic.
But I'm happy. So,
but if you
that's fantastic.
Kevin can be here for like days about the topic.
Right.
But what's interesting about that relationship?
How's his sense of humor?
Oh, very good, actually. Really good sense of humor. Great.
Good. Yeah.
It's interesting about why people get together in business. And what Kevin saw in me and I saw in Kevin were very different experiences. And when you build any business, you need someone that's got the opposite of what you've got.
Yes.
Because there's no point in trying to build all the skills in building a business. You need to find someone who's got complementary skills in building a business. And that's how we got together. So there is a rationale, Hirsch. There is, you see, a logic behind our relationship.
There's a formula.
There's a formula.
There is, and it's funny. It's something that I think has evolved the older I've gotten, as I've gone through my life. I've met people or cultivated people around me who were not similar in the sense that as a comedian, I didn't hang out with all comedians. But I hung out with people who loved stand-up comedy and wanted to do stand-up comedy. And sometimes I even put them in executive roles in my company, and then it didn't fit. And it was like, You know, but I had this kind of camaraderie thing that I was building, and that makes sense on a human level. But the idea that it's so important to talk to people and befriend people who have a different mindset and a different orientation in their way they look at things and what they find interesting.
Yep.
You know, so. And they may not want to go and hang at this particular comedy club, or they may not want to go and do this fun social activity. Now, I thought in my mind I was marrying business and leisure, and I was surrounding myself with people who enjoyed the same things I did, and that would make work life more enjoyable.
Right.
But really, in the end, it leaves a lot of gaps.
Correct.
You know, so
there we go.
I've learned that. Mike, this has been so much fun. I mean, we could go on and do more games, and I hope we will.
And drink more wine.
I hope we will, and drink more wine. And well, where did he go? Oh,
where's he gone? Where's he gone? I was talking.
But he just brought it over.
I turned around and he vanished. Like an old
regular table. Regular table. We have your regular table, sir, Mr. Bach. Regular table, regular chair. Take my coat.
I'll have a gin. To start with.
Take my coat. You don't have a coat. Then offer to take my hat. Oh no, take my tie. He says, offer to take my tie. But anyway, so much fun. Thank you so much for doing this.
Really enjoyed it, Hirsch. Brilliant. And I've never ever done improv on a podcast before. It's a real first. I loved it.
Well, you're gonna end up doing it again. I have a feeling.
Excellent. That would be amazing.
Alright.
If you liked the show,
Yes, and?
it worked for you,
Yes, then?
subscribe and leave a
Yes, friend.
5-star review.
Yes, friend.
Tell all your friends.
Yes, friend.
Get your branding here.
Yes, friend.
Get your branding here.
Yes, friend.
Did I make it clear?
Yes, friend.
Get your branding on
Yes.
before they're gone.
Yes.